All right, so today we're going to look at political participation. When it comes to the United States, the most widely used form of political participation is the vote. Other forms can include protesting, writing to a politician, attending a local meeting. All those are other examples of political participation. Now, if we look here at the U.S. federal election turnout, what we can see is that every 4 years, we get a jump in the percentage of people who vote. Now in 2010, we see a turnout of 37.8% of the population, whereas in 2008, we see 56. 2006, 37, 2004, 55. What I think about is that the higher rates of voting occur during presidential election years, while what we call the midterm elections tend to have a much lower rate of participation. One thing we can see is that between 2000 and 2010, voting has increased, but not by much. And we still only have just over 50% of the population voting in elections, even with Obama. Now, if we look at the rates over time, we can see that we've kind of gone up. We went greatly down in the 60s and the 70s. See a spike in 92, and then it drops a lot in 96, and then starts to go up. Now what we see here are two different lines: voting eligible population versus voting age population. Voting eligible, the people who are actually allowed to vote, while voting age is people who are 18 and over. Now when it comes to controlling how you vote, it's actually the states who make the most laws about who can vote and how you have to register. And the federal really just serves as a monitoring agency. Now throughout history, what we've already covered is that participation used to be limited. It starts with white men, and then it expands over time to include African American men. But as we know, the South did different things to limit that ability. Of course, women don't even get the right to vote until 1920, and 18-year-olds don't get it until the 70s. Now, in 1993, the government passed a law called the Motor Voter Act, and this basically forced the states to allow people to register to vote when they get their license. The idea was if we could increase registration, then maybe we could increase the number of people who vote. Now, while this didn't really work. It did increase registration, but it did not increase the number of people who voted. Another thing we tried to do was create a new form of ballot. So back in the day, it used to be that political parties really controlled the ballots, and so they made it so they could always win, and they intimidated people in how they could vote. We talked about this with Chicago. But today, ballots are all in secret, they're printed by the government, and they're all the same. So this is supposed to lower fraud, but what we noticed was also lowers turnout. So who participates? First off, we vote for a lot of people. So we can see if we look at Massachusetts, they vote for president, senators, representatives to the House, state governors, state reps, state senators, state attorney general, auditor, treasurer, secretary of state, county commissioner, sheriff, and clerks. And that's not even the whole list. So people get what we call ballot fatigue. They get tired of voting because there's so many things to vote for and there's so many things to pay attention to. So who actually bothers? Different factors tell us who can vote. Education is the most important. The more education, the more likely you are to vote. Civic involvement, this means how you get involved in your community. If you're more religious, you're more likely to vote. If you attend community meetings or protests, you're more likely to vote. Things like that. When it comes to race and ethnicity, whites are higher than most minorities. That being said, if you take out economic differences, African Americans actually have the highest participation rates. And that's usually on the test. So we continue. Age. Young people are the least likely to show up and vote, and if you're over 45, you have the highest likelihood. When it comes to gender, men traditionally voted more, but now it's more equal, with women actually outweighing men these days. Now, if it's really competitive, we tend to see elections having a higher turnout, especially people who are really excited about the politicians. Now here's the guarantee. The people who always vote are political elites. As you might remember, these are the kind of people who participate in the government beyond voting. These include the candidates, people who run for office, people who work on campaigns, journalists, people who participate in interest groups and social movements, people who speak out on public issues, all of that. So these are the people who definitely vote. In general, the idea is that the stronger the beliefs, the more participation, the more likely to vote. Now, the United States has a lower percentage of people who vote in elections than many other countries. We're currently ranked in like the 40s. So the question is why? One is that we have more elections than other countries, so it's a higher rate of frequency, and we have to vote on a lot of different positions, as we said. The second reason is that political parties are not very effective at getting out the vote anymore. In some states, registration laws are very restrictive, which makes it hard to register to vote, and not voting doesn't cost us anything, unlike Australia, where if you don't vote, you actually have to pay a $250 fine. Another thing is that there's a decline in the belief that elections mean much. People don't really see a difference between Democrats and Republicans anymore, and that leads them to not wanting to bother to vote. And that's it.